Oh God, that would be terrible. We're back.
Yeah, Bartello, I'm really sorry. My power decided to say, screw Socratic seminars. So I'm back, thankfully.
Back for
Uh,
part 2.
part two. Oh, yeah. So I remember what we were talking about before my power decided to stab me. So we were talking about the irony of Felix's names because Courtney said that Felix's name meant lucky and successful.
Yes.
And Emily mentioned that it was ironic, and I kind of wanted to add on that because Felix, at first, when he was living in France, was from a very rich family and was very happy and successful in that sense. But his success all went downhill ever since he tried to save that Arab guy from execution. And now he's living in the middle of nowhere in a cottage in Germany, and he's more depressed than both the old man and the girl and his sister. So that's why I think it's a little ironic that his name it means lucky and successful.
You think Shelley chose that name for him on purpose?
Ah, well, since most authors tend to choose names on purpose, I would say probably yes. I think partially because of the irony. There might be another reason to it that I'm not seeing as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can see it as ironic because of his situation being what it is.
Mhm. Also, I kind of wanted to get into how do you say her name? Safi's name?
Safi, yeah.
Yeah, so you said that her name is of male origin, right?
And
I
it
think
means pure.
here, and you also said something about wisdom, right?
Yeah, it has the Greek meaning of it conveys the wisdom, yeah.
I kind of want to say that I find it interesting that her name is of male origin because throughout the book, you see women taking a much more passive role throughout the book. Like, they always kind of tend to listen to what the man was saying. Like, Agatha never really did anything, like, outside of her womanly boundaries. Her name's Elizabeth, right? She never really
Mm.
did anything out of her womanly boundaries either. She kind of just always stayed put, but Safi is the first woman that you see throughout this entire book that disregards the whole gender, basically the whole gender hierarchy. And especially coming from the Middle East and coming from Muslim descent, where it's noted in the book that their gender roles are more confining than in Christianity.
Mhm.
Because Safi goes up against her male father, basically saying, "Screw you! I don't want to live in the Middle East. I want to do what I want." And she escapes. So I find it interesting that her name is of like male origin because men tend to have that more, I guess in quote, freedom based role and is higher than women on the gender hierarchy.
I feel like Shelley definitely chose that name for her, like with that sole purpose.
With that in mind, especially.
Yeah.
Although, why do you think she chose somebody from Arab descent? Why do you think she?
Hmm. That's a good question. Let me
I
look up.
thought it was to reflect in the beginning of the book when Henry brought Victor to his studies where he was studying Arabic, and that was kind of like where Victor was trying to escape his studies from, like his studies of science. So I thought maybe like her being Arabic was kind of, what was it, the Delanceys? That was their last name?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I thought it was like them trying to escape kind of like with her symbolically. Like she was going to bring love into their lives.
That makes sense.
So themes of escapism seen through like Arabic, basically.
Mhm.
I think that's a valid reason.
Yeah.
The reason that I was going to say was I think it's kind of I personally think that it could potentially be another jab at society
Mhm.
and gender roles on society because when she brings up Asian culture in the book, it's only negative, actually. The only things that she really tends to bring up about it are how the Muslim religion confines women and doesn't really treat them like people, and she wanted to escape that. So I think that could be basically like a jab at their culture, and basically her kind of like disagreeing with it and its confinement on gender.
You can definitely tell that Shelley definitely has like a more, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say open mind, because I'm trying to think of a word that describes like
Progressive?
yeah, like she's very progressive about how she feels about these certain situations. It's like this, it's like almost throughout the entire novel, like we've seen her take jabs at like society. Like it's crazy.
I think I agree with that. And I think that's especially seen through the monster himself, because I think he kind of ends up becoming like an embodiment of all of society's negativity. He kind of just becomes an embodiment of that because all of society's negativity is being taken out on him. So he starts to become negative.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if she ever went through like any of these experiences and it's like and like created the monster to kind of like show that to the audience.
Well, I believe that her mom wrote a lot of progressive books when I was like researching her life.
Yeah.
That could be trickling down to her.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Like these have to be based off of like real life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just seems so like, I don't know, I feel like these seem like common, like very common. Like somebody had to have gone through them. Like this is somebody's life story basically.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So one point that I wanted to bring up was when the monster related himself to both Satan and Adam from Adam and Eve. What are your thoughts, Aries, about that?
I think it's an interesting comparison, really. We kind of see hints of comparisons throughout the like in the Bible throughout the book. So I feel like it's only natural for the monster to compare himself to that, especially being in Germany. Like I think that in Germany in the 1800s, Europe is mostly, especially throughout that time, Christian. So it's almost inevitable that peeping through the cottage, he'd see hints of Christianity. And I think I was actually kind of making a little bit mental comparisons too, since I know a lot about the Bible myself, that like he could be kind of compared to Adam while Victor is compared to God as the creator. Although I didn't necessarily compare him to Satan up until it was brought up in the book, because he can be compared as to a damned creature like Satan is.
Mm-hmm.
And that was interesting to me.
What I was gonna say, like I didn't really see him comparing himself to Satan either. I mostly see it as like him comparing himself to Adam, because if you think about it, Adam lost his innocence when he disobeyed God about eating the apple, and God was his creator. So the monster sees Victor as his God in a way because he created him, and he feels like he lost his innocence after being disobeyed, or not being disobeyed, being abandoned by him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's causing him to like kind of alter his persona into like this negative, like
Negative being.
yeah, and it's like he's like craving vengeance on anybody he sees because he realizes that society basically acts the exact same way. So, well, now that I think about it, that kind of gives off like a more demonic vibe, so I can kind of like understand why he would compare himself to that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was intentional for him to like become this way.
I could see how he can relate himself to Adam, because Victor created him to create a more perfect like being, and God kind of created the human race to be a perfect like race. And like the mirror of events that happened between Adam and the monster kind of they really mirror each other, because they both slowly lose their innocence. Like they do it in different ways, but in the end they both know the reality of things, and they know like how society is going to treat them. going back to what Sarah said earlier about Shelley taking like jabs at certain things that society believes in, do you think that her relating the monster to both Adam and Satan is her taking a jab at Christianity?
Oh, that's interesting. I actually didn't think about that.
Yeah, that is interesting. I don't know if it's at her taking a jab at Christianity. I feel like it's more to just highlight the religion itself.
Well, I didn't. I'm not quite sure if Shelley was a Christian herself, but I think that might be dependent on whether or not she was a Christian or not. Because if she was Christian, it could be potentially her trying to highlight the faults in people that are Christian. And if she isn't Christian, it could be her taking a shot at Christianity as a whole.
I'm looking up her religion now to see if she is Christian.
Well, I can see, like, even if she wasn't a Christian, like, if she had a problem with it, maybe, like, a certain belief that they had, how she could take a jab at it.
Yeah. While Courtney's looking that up, do you want to change the subject a little bit?
I'm looking at my notes right now.
Yeah.
I guess we can go back to the family real quick, because I just found, like, a little point that I had. So the family was ultimately like hurt by society because Felix tried to help the Safia and her father escape prison.
Yeah.
And that ultimately hurt him and his family, which is kind of like society hurting them. And the monster is also hurt by society. So it's kind of ironic that the family would hurt the monster when they saw him, even though society hurt them. And I thought that kind of showed how the human race is inevitably going to hurt others through their bias and prejudice.
It kind of reminds me, like, based off of what you just said, it kind of reminds me of that saying, like, hurt people in a way. Like, it doesn't matter if someone else treats you like the way someone should be treated. Like, because of the fact that they've been hurt so much, they're just automatically going to assume that the next person's going to hurt them as well. So it's kind of like an inevitable pattern, or like an endless pattern of like hurt people hurting people.
I think that point actually brings up a question. I think that this question may have been brought up in previous Socratic seminars. Is the human race inherently bad? It's going all full house here. Full house, man.
Define what you mean by inherently.
Like, is society, are humans naturally, like, at nature, bad creatures? Like, do they come into the world okay, but then become bad? Or are they automatically bad? And what influences them to be bad? Like, I think this was in, like, the previous one, now that I think about it.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely has to deal with influence, because nobody's born bad, because when you're born, you don't know what's going on. You learn from those you're surrounded by. You learn from like previous generations. You learn from family, friends, strangers. Like, you learn from anybody. It all depends on like yourself and how you want to go about it. I don't think the human race is just born with bad intentions. I think it just kind of happens based off of influence.
I think it is like heavily influenced on the style of the book, because it's very gothic and it's got a few points of romanticism in there. You could see that in a couple characters like Henry. But overall, I think it's just that the style of the book is gothic, so it's going to have that gothic theme of the world's always naturally bad.
Yeah. I agree.
Do you think that's a good note to end the video on?
Yeah, ending our part 2.
Wait, before we end it.
Okay.
What was Shelley? Did you find out?
Shelley, that's right. Okay, so this article, it's not really saying what she is, but I'm gonna read the very last paragraph of it because I found it kind of interesting.
Okay.
So it says, although different characters in the story can be related to biblical figures. Oh my God.
You can do it.
Frankenstein takes place in a world that seems to be lacking religion. Despite this, at the conclusion of the story, ooh, I'm not gonna read that because that gives it away. Frankenstein comes to the conclusion, da 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 da. This is like giving away the entire end. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that to y'all. The
So
fact that
basically, the conclusion is like Mary Shelley isn't a very religious person.
yeah, it's saying that Shelley could be questioning the necessity of Christianity in general. And it says moral decisions and people can be reached without religion. I should have just read the last sentence.
It's okay. I decided to like look up an article real quick, and like the immediate sentence it says, in researching Mary Shelley, I came to the conclusion that she was most likely an unreligious person. So based on these views of Mary Shelley not being very religious, this could be like a jab at Christianity, as Emily
You're reading the exact
questioned.
same article as me. You're reading the exact same one.
Wow.
Yeah. But I agree with that. Yeah. She's definitely taking a jab. Maybe not just to Christianity. Do you think like in all religions or just like just that one?
Probably all religions, because she does give hints of Muslim being bad because of the fact with Safi trying to run away from Muslim ideals due to the gender constrictingness of it on the female gender. Although it's kind of more heavily on Christianity throughout the book compared to Muslim, which has only been brought up just like in this section so far.
I feel like she kind of highlights like the negatives in all religions to show that all religions kind of have their flaws because you know that there's some people in society who say like, oh, Christianity is the number one way to go, or being Muslim is the number one way to go, but or it's like the perfect religion. Like there's really no perfect religion. So she decides to like hint like, hey, there's negatives in every single one. Like, it's not
Yeah.
the perfect religion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, by showing like her father like kind of giving her hand away in marriage for his freedom, it kind of was like her just showing like the faults of it. Yeah, the faults of Islam, and I felt like her comparing the monster to both Satan and Adam from Christianity shows the faults in Christianity.
Yeah.
I can see where you're coming from there.
Yeah, definitely.
So now shall we end it?
Yeah, I just wanted to like figure that one out.
That's fine. Honestly, I think it was a good thing to bring up as a conclusion. So
yeah, definitely. All right, I think we're almost done with the book. Almost, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
So on to the next seminar, if not the last.
Spring breaks next week. Well, no, the week after that. We don't have to do a Scottish seminar.
oh yes.
We're almost done. All righty. Yeah.